She had never been in a place like this before. The music hall was enormous, with high ceilings that seemed to touch the sky and walls covered in golden decorations that reflected the soft lights. It was a cold evening outside, but inside, the room felt warm, alive, and full of energy. People were dressed in their finest clothes, their faces lit with excitement. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, as if everyone was waiting for something extraordinary to happen. She had only come because a friend had given her a ticket, insisting it would be an unforgettable experience. She had no idea it would turn into a moment that would change her life. As she walked through the crowded hall, she felt a mixture of awe and nervousness. The polished wooden floor shone under her feet, and the scent of old books and polished wood mixed with a faint perfume that seemed to linger everywhere. She had always loved music but had never imagined herself in such a grand setting. It felt like stepping into another world, one where dreams and reality blended seamlessly. She took her seat quietly, hoping not to attract attention, feeling slightly out of place among the elegantly dressed audience members. On the stage, a man she had heard about all her life was tuning a grand piano. He was famous, known for his incredible skill and the way he could make a piano sing. Stories about him were everywhere, from music magazines to online videos. People admired him not just for his talent but also for the charm he carried on stage. Watching him work on the piano, adjusting the pedals, and pressing a few test keys, she felt a thrill run through her. There was something magnetic about him, a confidence that drew the eyes of everyone in the hall. As the lights dimmed and the performance began, she found herself completely absorbed. The music floated through the hall, touching every corner, wrapping around the audience like a warm blanket. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the notes wash over her. She had heard music before, but never like this. It wasn't just notes. It was a story, a conversation, a journey that seemed to include everyone in the room. For a few minutes, she forgot about everything else, her small worries, her ordinary life, and even the busy world outside. All that mattered was the music. Halfway through the performance, the pianist looked up from the keys, his eyes scanning the audience. When they met hers, she felt a jolt of recognition, even though he had never seen her before. There was a playful spark in his eyes, a hint of mischief. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, unsure why he seemed to be looking right at her. The hall was so large that it was easy to feel invisible, but at that moment, she felt noticed, almost singled out. It was both thrilling and terrifying. Then, during a pause between pieces, the pianist stood and spoke. His voice carried across the hall effortlessly, yet it was warm and engaging. He joked about how even someone who had never played the piano could try their hand at it, teasing the audience with a playful smile. He pointed toward her, still smiling, and said in a light-hearted tone that she should come up and play the piano. The audience laughed softly, thinking it was just part of the performance, a harmless joke. She blinked in surprise, not sure she had heard correctly. Did he really mean her? Everyone's eyes were now on her, and she felt every heartbeat echoing in her chest. Her mind raced. She had never played in front of anyone, certainly not in a hall like this. The thought of making a mistake, of being laughed at, filled her with a mix of fear and embarrassment. Her palms felt sweaty, and she could hardly catch her breath. She considered refusing, thinking of how ordinary she was compared to the skilled musicians who performed here every day. Yet, a small, unexpected voice inside her whispered to take a chance, to do something she had never imagined possible. It was a voice she had rarely heard before, telling her that maybe this was her moment. Around her, the audience murmured, some curious, some skeptical. Friends nudged each other, unsure if this was really happening. The pianist's gaze never left her, but the expression on his face had shifted slightly. The playful smile remained, but there was now a hint of curiosity, as if even he wondered what might happen. The hall was silent except for the faint rustling of dresses and suits as people leaned forward, waiting to see her reaction. The tension in the air was almost tangible, like the calm before a storm. She stood slowly, feeling every eye on her. Her legs felt like they were made of lead, and each step toward the stage seemed longer than the last. When she reached the piano, it towered before her, its polished surface gleaming under the lights. She hesitated, touching the keys lightly, as if afraid they might bite. She had no idea what to play. No plan, no rehearsal, just a faint memory of music from her childhood, and the feeling of rhythm she had always loved. She took a deep breath and sat down on the bench, trying to calm the storm of nerves inside her. The pianist stepped back slightly, giving her space but keeping a close eye. He still smiled, but the humor in his expression was tinged with anticipation. The audience leaned forward, collectively holding their breath. The first few notes she played were shaky, uneven, and quiet. She felt her fingers stumble, and a wave of panic threatened to take over. But then something remarkable happened. She let herself feel the music rather than think about it. Her hands began to move more naturally, guided by instinct rather than conscious thought. The hall seemed to fade away, leaving only the piano and the music flowing from it. Slowly, the notes became smoother, more confident. She experimented with melodies she remembered from her childhood and blended them with improvisation she had never realized she could do. The sound surprised even her. Each note resonated, filling the hall, wrapping around the audience in a way she had never imagined possible. She glanced at the pianist, who now had a look of genuine astonishment. His eyes widened slightly, and he leaned forward, clearly impressed. The laughter and jokes were gone, replaced by a silence filled with attention and wonder. For the audience, it was a transformation. The woman who had seemed ordinary, even timid, was creating music that touched hearts. Some people sat in stunned silence, unable to believe what they were hearing. Others smiled, eyes glistening with emotion. The music became a bridge, connecting the performer with the listeners in a way that words never could. The hall was no longer a place of separation between the famous and the ordinary. It had become a shared space of pure human experience. She finished the piece, the last note lingering in the air like a gentle whisper. The audience erupted into applause, cheering louder than she had ever imagined. She stood, still trembling slightly, unsure of how to respond. The pianist approached, extending his hand with a smile that was no longer playful but full of admiration. She realized that something extraordinary had happened. What started as a joke had turned into a moment of real magic, a moment where courage and hidden talent had revealed themselves in front of the world. It was the beginning of something she could not have predicted, a night that would remain in her memory forever. After the applause faded, the woman stepped down from the stage with her heart still racing. The hall had quieted slightly, but whispers and murmurs ran through the audience, carrying surprise and admiration. She could hardly believe what had just happened. Her fingers still tingled from playing, and a sense of disbelief mixed with pride filled her chest. She walked back to her seat slowly, each step heavy with both excitement and exhaustion. The pianist had returned to his own place at the piano, giving her a look that was no longer teasing. Instead, it held curiosity, a silent question about how someone like her could create something so extraordinary. As she sat, she felt her knees shaking and her hands cold despite the warmth of the hall. She kept replaying the music in her mind, the notes blending together in a way that made her feel alive and frightened at the same time. It was one thing to play for herself at home, in the quiet of her small apartment, where mistakes didn't matter. It was another thing entirely to play in front of hundreds of people, in a room filled with skillful musicians and music lovers. And yet, somehow, it had happened and it had been beautiful. She couldn't explain it, and that made the experience even more surreal. Around her, the audience was buzzing. People whispered to each other about the unexpected talent they had just witnessed. Many of them were skeptics at first, sure that the woman would fail, yet now they were exchanging glances filled with wonder. Some had even taken out their phones to record the performance, hoping to capture the moment for themselves or for the world to see. The hall had been filled with laughter and casual amusement just minutes ago, and now it was transformed into a place of awe and respect. The energy in the room shifted from entertainment to genuine admiration. Her mind wandered back to the moment when the pianist had pointed at her. She remembered the fear, the uncertainty, and the doubt that had surged through her. She thought about the voices in her head telling her she wasn't ready, that she didn't belong here, and yet, the instinct to play, to express herself, had won over all that hesitation. She realized that the courage to step forward, even when the world expected her to fail, had made all the difference. For the first time in her life, she understood that talent could be hidden, waiting for a single moment to be revealed. As the next performance began, she tried to focus on the music, but her mind kept replaying what had just happened. She noticed the pianist watching her every now and then, his expression unreadable yet thoughtful. She wondered if he was analyzing her style, or perhaps wondering how someone with so little formal experience could play with such natural grace. The thought made her both nervous and proud. She had never considered herself a serious musician, and yet here she was, being quietly studied by one of the most respected pianists in the world. The whispers of the audience didn't escape her. Some were pointing her out, still amazed by the unexpected turn of events. Others were quietly commenting on how a simple person, someone who appeared ordinary and unassuming, could have such a hidden gift. She tried not to let it overwhelm her, but it was hard. She felt the weight of expectations settling on her shoulders, a strange mix of pressure and excitement. It was as if she had stepped through a door into a world she had only dreamed about, but never believed she could enter. When the performance finally ended, she lingered in her seat, unsure whether to leave immediately or stay and take in the energy around her. She noticed a few audience members coming up to speak to her quietly, complimenting her playing, asking where she had learned such skill. She mumbled polite answers, feeling awkward and unprepared for attention. She was used to anonymity, to blending into the background, yet tonight, she had been thrust into the spotlight. The experience was exhilarating and frightening at the same time. As the hall slowly emptied, she found herself standing near the stage, watching the pianist pack up his sheet music and prepare to leave. Something about his demeanor had changed since the moment he had first pointed at her. He no longer seemed playful or teasing. There was a seriousness in his eyes, a hint of respect. He approached her, his voice calm and steady, asking how long she had been playing piano. She hesitated, unsure how much to reveal, but answered truthfully that she had learned on her own, mostly as a child, and had not had formal lessons. The pianist seemed genuinely impressed. He didn't make jokes or tease. Instead, he nodded thoughtfully, acknowledging the effort and innate talent it must have taken to play so confidently without formal training. He spoke about the unpredictability of music, how sometimes the most genuine performances came from unexpected places. She listened carefully, absorbing every word. His acknowledgement felt like validation, not just of her skill, but of her courage to take a step forward when she had every reason to step back. After a few moments, he excused himself, and she watched him leave the hall. The room was nearly empty now, the echoes of music and applause fading into silence. She felt a mix of relief and longing, wishing the moment could last longer, yet also grateful for the experience. As she walked home, she replayed the evening over and over in her mind. Every detail, from the grand piano to the expressions on the audience's faces, was etched in her memory. She realized that she had crossed a threshold, that she had discovered a new side of herself she had never known existed. In the days that followed, the experience stayed with her. She found herself practicing more, experimenting with new melodies, exploring music with a freedom she had never felt before. Her confidence grew slowly, not in a showy way, but quietly, as she realized that her gift was real and that she had the courage to share it. She thought about the pianist's words often, remembering the seriousness and respect in his tone. It motivated her to keep learning, to push herself, and to embrace the possibility that music could take her to places she had never imagined. Friends noticed the change in her. She seemed lighter, happier, more animated, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She spoke about music with enthusiasm, sharing stories of that unforgettable night, and even gave small performances in front of close friends. Each time, she remembered the feeling of being on stage, the fear and exhilaration mingling in a way that was both terrifying and exhilarating. She realized that stepping out of her comfort zone, even in a moment that started as a joke, had opened a door to a world she never thought possible. Her life began to shift in subtle ways. People she met began to recognize her for her talent, though she still remained humble and grounded. Invitations to perform at small gatherings started arriving, each one a chance to share her gift and build confidence. She approached each opportunity with both excitement and trepidation, remembering the hall, the pianist, and the transformative experience of that night. She felt a growing sense of responsibility, not only to herself but to the music that had awakened something deep inside her. Though she had stepped forward reluctantly, the experience taught her an important lesson about courage and the unexpected ways life could surprise her. What had started as a simple joke, a playful challenge, had become a turning point in her life. She realized that fear could be a companion to courage, and that hidden within every ordinary person was the potential for extraordinary moments. The memory of that night, the sound of the piano, and the gaze of the famous pianist remained with her, shaping her journey in ways she could not yet fully understand. Days passed after her unexpected performance, but the memory of that night stayed with her constantly. Every morning, she found herself thinking about the piano, the hall, and the sound that had filled it. She couldn't ignore the feeling that something had changed inside her. Before, music had been just a quiet part of her life, something she enjoyed alone, a personal escape from the ordinary routine. Now, it had become something larger, something that could reach out and touch others. The idea both thrilled and frightened her. She realized she could no longer hide from her own potential. One morning, she decided to visit a small music shop to look at sheet music she had never dared to explore before. The shop smelled of old paper, varnish, and a faint hint of coffee from the small cafe next door. Shelves were lined with books, scores, and instruments, and she wandered among them slowly, running her fingers along the spines of the music books, feeling an almost sacred reverence. She picked up a book of classical pieces she had never tried and flipped through the pages, imagining herself sitting at a piano and playing them, hearing each note as clearly in her mind as if she were already performing. Her fingers itched to touch the keys, to bring the music to life. As she left the shop, she realized she needed to practice more seriously. That night, in her small apartment, she sat at her old upright piano and started slowly, carefully choosing each note. She remembered the thrill of performing in the hall and tried to recreate that feeling, letting her emotions guide her fingers instead of just following the sheet music. Hours passed without her noticing, lost in a world of melodies, rhythms, and harmonies. She felt a growing confidence that surprised her. The music came more naturally now, and her hands moved with a sense of purpose she had never felt before. The next week, she received an invitation from a local community center to perform at a small event. It was not a grand hall like before, but it was another opportunity to share her gift. She hesitated, wondering if she was ready, yet a quiet voice inside her encouraged her to accept. The memory of the pianist's gaze, full of respect and curiosity, stayed with her, urging her to keep stepping forward. She realized that even small performances could help her grow, and that each experience, no matter how modest, could be meaningful. On the day of the performance, she arrived early, feeling the familiar mix of excitement and nervousness. The community center was modest, with folding chairs and a simple stage, but to her it felt like a new frontier. People trickled in, curious to see the woman who had captured attention before. She sat at the piano, her fingers hovering above the keys, and took a deep breath. For a moment, doubt crept in, whispering that she might fail, that she wasn't ready for this. But she remembered her first performance in the grand hall, the thrill of courage, and she let that memory steady her. As she began to play, the music filled the room, soft at first, then growing in strength and confidence. She experimented with new melodies, blending what she had learned from sheet music with the improvisation that came naturally. Each note seemed to tell a story, and she felt a deep connection with the audience. They leaned forward, listening intently, moved by the unexpected beauty of her performance. Some smiled softly, others closed their eyes, and a few even seemed to hold their breath, captivated by the music. The simple event became a shared experience of emotion, wonder, and appreciation. When she finished, There was a moment of silence before the room erupted into applause. She smiled shyly, feeling the warmth of the audience's appreciation, and for the first time, she truly understood how powerful music could be. It wasn't just about skill or practice. It was about expressing something deep inside, something that could touch hearts. She realized that her gift was not about perfection, but about honesty, courage, and the willingness to share herself with others. After the performance, people approached her, offering compliments and asking questions. Many were surprised that someone so ordinary-looking could create such profound music. She answered politely, sometimes shyly, sometimes with quiet pride. One older man, a retired musician, told her that she had a rare gift and that she should consider taking her talent further. Another woman, a teacher at the local school, suggested she perform for students, inspiring young minds with the unexpected discovery of talent. Each comment, each recognition, fueled her determination to keep going. Over the following weeks, she began to practice with greater intensity. She explored different styles, from classical to contemporary, always seeking to improve, but also to discover more of herself in the music. She realized that her ability to improvise, to let her emotions guide her fingers, was something special. She felt that no matter how much she learned, there would always be room for creativity, for spontaneity, for moments that could surprise even herself. Each practice session was not just about learning notes, but about understanding herself and the power of expression. Her confidence grew with each day, yet she remained humble. She knew she was still learning, still discovering, and that the journey was ongoing. She began to see that talent was not just about the applause or recognition, but about the act of giving, of sharing something beautiful with the world. Her music became a language she used to connect with others, to tell stories, and to evoke emotions that words could not capture. The experience of being noticed in the grand hall had ignited a spark, but now she was fanning it into a flame. One evening, she received a letter from a local music society, inviting her to perform at a small recital. This time, it would be in front of other musicians, people who knew the technical aspects of music and could appreciate the skill required. She felt a surge of anxiety, imagining critical eyes and ears analyzing every note. Yet, beneath the fear, there was excitement, the opportunity to challenge herself, to test the depth of her ability, and to see how far she could go. She accepted the invitation, determined to give her best performance. When the day of the recital arrived, she prepared carefully. She chose pieces that allowed her to showcase both technical skill and emotional expression. She practiced meticulously, yet she also allowed room for improvisation, trusting her instincts. As she sat at the piano, she felt a familiar rush of nerves, but she reminded herself that fear was part of the process, and that courage was moving forward despite it. She took a deep breath, let her fingers find their place on the keys, and began to play. The music flowed effortlessly, surprising even her. The audience, composed of experienced musicians and enthusiasts, was captivated by the depth and emotion in her performance. Some nodded in approval, others leaned forward, visibly moved. She felt a deep connection, not just to the music, but to the people who were listening. For the first time, she understood that music had the power to bridge differences, to unite strangers in a shared experience of beauty and emotion. She was no longer just a simple woman at a piano. She was a conduit for something extraordinary. When she finished, the applause was overwhelming. She stood, feeling both relief and joy, her cheeks flushed and her heart pounding. The recognition was different this time, more profound, coming from people who understood the skill and dedication involved. They approached her afterward, offering congratulations and encouragement. Each compliment reinforced her sense of purpose, showing her that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. She felt gratitude, not just for herself, but for the journey that had led her here. That night, as she returned home, she reflected on how far she had come. The woman who had hesitated on stage in a grand hall, unsure of herself and afraid of failure, was now someone who had embraced her talent and shared it confidently. She realized that her journey was only beginning, that there were countless opportunities ahead to learn, grow, and inspire others. She understood that the true reward was not in fame or recognition, but in the act of creating, of expressing herself, and of touching the hearts of those who listened. And with that thought, she sat by her piano once more, letting her fingers wander over the keys, ready to explore the music that was still waiting to be discovered. Weeks passed since her small recital, and word of her talent had begun to spread quietly but steadily. People who had heard her play told friends, friends mentioned it to others, and soon she found herself receiving invitations to perform at places she had never imagined. She was no longer just the simple woman who had been part of a playful joke. She was becoming someone people were genuinely curious about. Each new opportunity was both thrilling and terrifying, but she approached them with a growing sense of courage, ready to embrace whatever came next. One afternoon, she received an invitation from a renowned music hall in the city. It was smaller than the grand hall where she had first performed, but it was still prestigious, with audiences that included critics, music enthusiasts, and even professional musicians. She hesitated, feeling a mix of excitement and fear. This was a step into a bigger world, one where her skill would be examined more closely, where the stakes were higher, and where the spotlight would shine even more brightly. She knew that this performance could change everything for her. As the day of the performance arrived, she prepared carefully. She practiced for hours, making sure every note, every movement of her fingers, was precise. Yet she also allowed herself to leave space for improvisation, trusting her instincts. She knew that the magic of music was not just in perfection but in expression. When she arrived at the hall, she was struck by its elegance. The polished floors, the soft golden lights, the deep red curtains framing the stage. It felt both intimidating and inspiring, a place where extraordinary things could happen. The audience filled the seats, a mix of people who had heard of her and those who were simply there to enjoy the evening. The hall buzzed with anticipation, the kind that made the air feel almost alive. As she walked onto the stage, her heart pounded in her chest, but she held her head high, reminding herself that she had faced fear before and that courage had always led her to something remarkable. She took her seat at the piano, feeling the weight of the keys beneath her fingers, and looked up at the expectant faces in the audience. When she began to play, the room was immediately captivated. The music flowed effortlessly from her fingers, weaving through the air like a living thing. Each note carried emotion, telling stories of joy, sorrow, hope, and wonder. She lost herself in the music, forgetting everything else, the audience, the critics, the hall itself, and allowed the melodies to come naturally. Her playing was not just technically skilled. It was alive, vibrant, and profoundly moving. Every person listening felt the connection, drawn into the story she was telling without words. Midway through her performance, something remarkable happened. She began to improvise, creating a melody that was entirely her own, inspired by the rhythm of her heart and the feeling of the moment. The audience gasped softly, caught off guard by the originality and depth of the music. Her fingers danced across the keys with precision and emotion, producing sounds that were both unexpected and perfectly harmonious. Even the most experienced musicians in the audience leaned forward, their eyes wide with amazement, realizing that this was not a simple recital but a revelation of true talent. The pianist who had first joked with her months ago had been invited to the same performance as a guest. When he recognized her playing, he felt a surge of astonishment. He had expected curiosity and charm, but what he witnessed now was extraordinary. She had not only honed her skills, but had transformed her natural ability into something unforgettable. His eyes widened in admiration, and a rare smile crossed his face, one that was not playful but filled with genuine respect. The joke that had started it all had turned into a moment of real awe. As she continued, the music became even more intense, carrying the emotions of every experience she had faced. The fear, the doubt, the courage, and the discovery of her own potential. Each note resonated through the hall, reaching every corner, touching hearts and evoking strong reactions. Some in the audience had tears in their eyes, others smiled in amazement, and a few sat completely still, captivated by the beauty and depth of the performance. It was a moment that transcended ordinary experiences, a shared feeling that connected performer and listeners in a profound way. When she reached the final notes, she held them, letting them linger in the air. The silence that followed was deep and full of reverence. For a moment, no one moved or spoke, as if afraid to break the spell she had created. Then, slowly, the hall erupted into applause, cheers, and whistles of admiration. The sound was overwhelming, almost deafening. Yet she stood there, smiling humbly, feeling a mix of relief, joy, and disbelief. She had done it. She had taken what had started as a joke and turned it into something that moved everyone who witnessed it. After the performance, the pianist approached her, his eyes shining with respect. He did not make a joke this time. Instead, he congratulated her on her skill, creativity, and courage. He told her that she had a rare gift, something that could inspire countless people if she continued to embrace it. His words were sincere, and they struck her deeply, reinforcing her confidence and determination. She realized that her journey was far from over, and that the recognition she received now was just the beginning of something much larger. In the following days, news of her performance spread rapidly. Music critics wrote about her unexpected brilliance, describing her playing as both technically impressive and emotionally moving. Social media buzzed with videos and comments, with people expressing amazement at the talent of someone who had started as a simple, ordinary woman. Invitations poured in from other halls, societies, and events, each offering a chance to share her gift with wider audiences. She felt both overwhelmed and exhilarated, realizing that her life had changed in ways she could never have predicted. Despite the attention, she remained humble and grounded. She continued to practice daily, exploring new styles, experimenting with her improvisation, and seeking to understand the depths of her talent. She also remembered the importance of sharing music as an expression of herself, not just as a performance for others. The joy of creating, of feeling the music and letting it speak, was as important as the recognition she received. She understood that her gift was a responsibility, a way to touch lives and inspire courage in others. She also began to reflect on how the journey had started, the playful joke of the famous pianist that had led her to step onto a stage for the first time. She realized that life could be unpredictable, and sometimes the most extraordinary moments came from the most ordinary beginnings. The lesson stayed with her. Courage, curiosity, and a willingness to take risks could reveal hidden potential and transform a life forever. The experience taught her to trust herself, embrace opportunities, and believe in the power of her own abilities. As she prepared for future performances, she felt a growing sense of purpose. Each new stage, each new audience, was an opportunity to share her music and connect with people in a meaningful way. She no longer feared judgment or failure. She embraced the challenge, knowing that her courage and talent had carried her this far. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the pianist who had sparked the journey, for the audiences who had witnessed her growth, and for the music that had always been a part of her, waiting for the right moment to shine. Her story became a source of inspiration for many. People saw that hidden talent could be found in anyone, regardless of background or experience. They understood that courage, even in the face of fear, could open doors to opportunities and moments of greatness. She had started as a simple woman, underestimated and overlooked, yet through determination, bravery, and the willingness to take a chance, she had astonished everyone and discovered a new life filled with possibilities. That performance would be remembered as the moment when a playful joke transformed into a true revelation, a turning point that shocked everyone and changed her world forever. After the performance that had left everyone in awe, her life began to change in ways she had never imagined. Invitations to perform poured in from different cities, small music societies, and even larger halls. People were curious about the woman who had started as a simple audience member, now turning heads with her remarkable talent. Each invitation was both exciting and daunting. She had always been cautious, used to living quietly, but now she realized that her courage had opened doors to a life she had never considered. She decided to embrace every opportunity, feeling that this was her chance to grow not just as a musician but as a person. In the days following her big performance, she spent hours practicing, exploring new pieces, and refining her skills. She wanted to ensure that every note she played carried the same emotion and passion that had amazed the audience. She experimented with different styles, blending classical techniques with her own improvisation, creating something that felt uniquely her own. Each practice session was a journey, sometimes frustrating, sometimes exhilarating, but always rewarding. She discovered that music was not just about technical perfection. It was about expressing herself fully, sharing a part of her soul with anyone who would listen. Word of her talent reached the pianist who had originally joked with her. He contacted her, inviting her to a private session to play together. At first, she felt nervous, remembering the way it all had begun with a playful challenge. But she also felt excitement. This was an opportunity to learn from someone she had long admired. When they met, he greeted her warmly, no longer teasing, but offering encouragement and guidance. Their session was filled with laughter, advice, and mutual respect. He helped her refine certain techniques, while she brought her own creativity and emotion to the pieces. The collaboration was inspiring, showing her that even someone who seemed ordinary could contribute something extraordinary. As she continued to perform, her confidence grew steadily. Audiences came not just to see a talented pianist, but to witness someone who had discovered her own voice, someone whose courage had transformed her life. She played in small halls, large theaters, and community events, always focusing on sharing her love for music rather than seeking fame. Each performance strengthened her, teaching her new ways to connect with listeners and deepening her appreciation for the art. She began to realize that her talent was not just a personal gift but a tool to inspire others, to show that hidden potential could exist in anyone willing to take a chance. She also began to reflect on her journey and the lessons she had learned. Fear and doubt were natural, she realized, but they could be overcome with courage and persistence. The playful challenge from the famous pianist had been the spark, but it was her willingness to step forward and embrace the unknown that had made all the difference. She learned that opportunities could come from unexpected places, and that embracing them required both bravery and trust in oneself. This understanding gave her strength not just as a musician, but as a person navigating the wider world. With growing recognition, she started mentoring young musicians and students. She shared her story, emphasizing that talent could be found anywhere, often where it was least expected. She encouraged them to take risks, to explore their abilities, and to trust their instincts. Watching them discover their own potential was deeply fulfilling, reinforcing the lessons she had learned. She saw herself in them, the uncertainty, the fear, and ultimately, the joy of finding hidden gifts. Her story became more than personal achievement. It became a source of inspiration and guidance for others. Her personal life also transformed in subtle ways. She began meeting people who shared her passion for music and creativity, forming friendships and connections that enriched her experiences. She found herself invited to cultural events, artistic gatherings, and collaborative projects. The world that once seemed distant and intimidating now felt open and inviting. Each interaction reminded her that courage, talent, and authenticity could attract opportunities and meaningful relationships. Despite the growing recognition, she remained humble. She never forgot the small, quiet moments when she practiced alone, learning from mistakes and experimenting with melodies. She understood that success was not just about public admiration but about staying true to herself and her love for music. This humility made her performances even more genuine, allowing audiences to connect with the emotion behind every note. She realized that the joy of creation and the courage to share it were far more valuable than any accolades or attention. Months passed, and she began traveling to perform in different cities. Each new audience brought excitement and a fresh challenge. She played in places she had never imagined visiting, each stage teaching her something new about her craft and herself. She learned to adapt, to read the audience, and to let her emotions guide her playing. The experience was both demanding and deeply rewarding, strengthening her resilience and deepening her connection to music. She felt grateful for every moment, knowing that each opportunity had been earned through courage, dedication, and the willingness to step forward. As her reputation grew, She was invited to collaborate with other musicians, exploring new forms of expression. She performed duets, ensemble pieces, and experimental compositions, each collaboration expanding her understanding of music and creativity. She discovered that her ability to listen, adapt, and contribute made her a valued partner, not just a solo performer. The experience taught her about teamwork, empathy, and the shared joy of creating something beautiful together. Music had become not only a personal journey but a communal one, connecting people across differences and experiences. Looking back, she often thought about the night when everything began. The playful joke of the famous pianist had been the catalyst, but the real transformation had come from within her. She had taken a risk, embraced fear, and trusted her own abilities. That night had shown her that extraordinary moments could emerge from the simplest beginnings, and that courage and authenticity were the keys to unlocking hidden potential. The memory remained a source of inspiration, reminding her that life could surprise her in ways she could never predict. Her story continued to inspire people far beyond the audiences she played for. Articles, social media posts, and personal accounts celebrated her journey from a humble woman to a remarkable pianist whose courage had changed her life. People were drawn to her authenticity, her humility, and her determination. She became a symbol of what could happen when talent, opportunity, and bravery intersected. Her life had shifted from ordinary to extraordinary, not through chance alone, but through the choices she had made, the risks she had taken, and the passion she had nurtured. Through it all, she remained deeply connected to the music itself. It was never just a path to recognition or success. It was the essence of her expression, the way she communicated what words could not. Every note she played carried emotion, experience, and growth. She continued to explore, to learn, and to share, knowing that her journey was ongoing. There were always new melodies to discover, new stories to tell, and new moments to create. In the end, she realized that the most important lesson was not about talent or recognition, but about courage, curiosity, and the willingness to step into the unknown. Life had presented her with a playful challenge, a moment that seemed insignificant at first, and it had transformed her in profound ways. She had learned to trust herself, embrace opportunities, and understand that hidden potential could emerge in the most unexpected places. Her journey was a testament to the power of believing in oneself and the extraordinary possibilities that awaited those willing to take a chance. She continued to perform, inspire, and grow, carrying the memory of that first stage, the playful challenge, and the shock it created with her always. She had discovered a life richer than she had ever imagined, a life filled with music, courage, connection, and the joy of sharing her gift with the world. And in every performance, in every note, she reminded herself and everyone watching that greatness often begins in the most ordinary moments, waiting for someone brave enough to embrace it.